Yeah, so in this video what I'm going to do is take apart this, which is the Hope rear hub. This one doesn't have any markings on there, but I'm pretty sure it's the Pro 2 hub. They are a little bit tricky sometimes to get these end caps off. And you can see on this one that it's quite chewed up, where people have put like pliers and stuff on there to pull that off. So yeah, what we're going to do is get the end caps off first. And I do actually use pliers because some people might be able to just wiggle it off. It really depends how tight it is on there. Some of them do seize on there. There is a rubber O-ring on the inside, and I think sometimes they expand and therefore it kind of gets stuck on the axle. What I tend to do with these is I don't like to touch the end bit. I prefer this bit here, this kind of darker bit, because I think this is a harder metal. I think it might be steel, whereas this bit is aluminium and it's softer and it's just going to get damaged, like you can see there. So I've got a set of these pliers. What I don't want to do, I don't want to put it on there like that and lever against the Freehub and damage it. There is thread on the inside, so I don't want to damage that. So I'm going to do it this way around. I'm just going to grab that and just wiggle it and pull. And there we go. As we can see in there, there's quite a bit of grease, and there's a rubber seal. There's actually a bit of rubber there as well, just on the end of my little finger. So this kind of rubber seal in there is fraying. I don't have a replacement for that, so yeah, we'll just kind of re-put that back there. There's not really much we can do with that one, I don't think. And then the Freehub should just pull off. There we go. And then most importantly, I guess, is there is a little washer inside that you don't want to lose. There we go. So there's quite a hefty, thick washer inside. And then you have your Freehub with the paws, or one of them's fallen off already. And if you want to, what you can do is just remove all the paws. I find the best way is actually to get like a little flat screwdriver and just try and lever it right close to the actual pivot point. So you can put it under here, and then you get nice and close to the pivot and just lever up. Give it a little wiggle and it should come free. There we go. And then you also have 4 little springs as well, which come out quite a bit easier. Number 3, and then one more, and there's 4 of them. This little seal, this plastic seal, is called Labyrinth seal, and that's what stops water getting into the hub. And so basically sits around there and it tries to stop dirt and water getting into the hub. You can remove these, they are a little bit tricky. Yeah, you kind of have to be quite forceful with them to get them off, which I'm always a little bit worried about damaging them, but there we go. They seem to be quite robust. Yeah, and I guess what we're going to do is knock the bearings out of the Freehub now. Just going to move these out of the way, put them somewhere safe. Middle of nowhere, probably lose them, but yeah, as you can probably see on the Freehub, you have a bigger bearing at the front than at the rear. And there is a little metal tube on the inside that you should be able to move, and if you can't, you're going to have a little bit of trouble. So what we can do there, we can get behind the bearing because we're moving this tube on the inside. It's a little bit difficult to see, but you'll know when you do it. And we are going to use a little standoff. That one's too big. It's just a way for us to knock the bearings out. So yeah, I'm just going to grab a punch and get a hammer. And we are going to whack the old bearings out. Obviously you've got replacement bearings, so it's not going to matter too much if you do damage them. So I'm just going to start on this end, give it a little tap, I'm just going to go to the opposite end and try and basically walk the bearing out. There we go. There's your little tube that you needed to kind of move to get behind the bearing. And there is your lovely bearing there. It's very, very grainy. Probably died quite a long time ago, that one. And then means we've got loads of access to get into there to do this bearing. And what would be the better way of doing this? That fits nicely in there. This is an actual bottom bracket tool, but it just has loads of different levels on there. All you need is some way to hold or to sit this onto something so that there's space underneath to knock the bearing through, and have some sort of contact where it's not going to damage it too much. If you put it on like a brick wall or something and then you're hammering, and you're going to damage this area. So yeah, a piece of wood or something with a hole in the bottom would be good. This one we're just going to raise the height a little bit. There we go. And to my surprise, because I haven't done one of these free hubs again, a little bit like the Bont Ranger hub that I'd done, we do actually have two bearings. And these bearings actually feel alright. So the two smaller ones feel good. But yeah, we'll replace those. What we'll do is move all this out of the way, and we'll do the free hub, the actual hub, sorry. Which is pretty much a very, very similar thing. You may struggle again to get this. So I'm going to hold the axle and just show you, like, you can't separately turn this end cap. It's like really strongly on there. I don't actually think I need to remove that right now. I'm just going to pop that on there. We are going to grab something to put on top. A block of wood will be good, which is actually holding up the camera. You might need to zoom out a bit. There we go, something like that. So I'm just going to pop a bit of wood on top of the axle because I don't want to damage the axle at all. So we're just going to hit that with a hammer, and that should push the bearing out of here along with this end cap, and then we'll deal with the end cap after. Once again, I've got like something for the hub to go onto so it's not going to get damaged. A piece of nylon. A bit of wood would also be pretty good as well. You can put the end cap on there and hammer that, but I just feel like it will just end up damaging this aluminium bit, and that's kind of got wedged on there again. Let's get that out of the way. Just goes to show you how easily these end caps kind of get stuck on there. Here we go. There is a little groove there for the the rubber seal to sit into. But yeah, I don't really want to damage that. Some people actually put like a bolt here, so I don't think I'm going to have one big enough. Oh, there we go. So they might put something like that in there. So we put the bolt in there, and what happens is you hit the bolt rather than hitting the axle. But I'm not, I don't know, not entirely happy with that system because I feel like the bolt's going to just damage that end of the axle. So I'm going to stick to my piece of wood. Try and keep things nice and straight. There we go. And what we'll do is we'll sort this bit out after. See, there's your bearing and your axle and your end cap. Yeah, so admittedly, when I do this bit, it's probably, I kind of feel like it's not the best method of doing it, but it's the only method that I can see with the tools that I have available. So this axle, you might find it just pulls off. If it's been on there a long time, probably won't. And it'll probably be a bit of a bugger to sort out. So just do what we did on the other end cap. Just hold it with a pair of pliers. and basically just wiggle the axle, and then it should just pop off like that. Then you've got like a rubber weather seal that stops crap getting into the hub on this side. And then the problem that you have is this bearing is pressed onto the axle. One of the best ways is if you had like, so what we've got here is like a wooden bench. If you had like a hole and you could drop, imagine this is standing vertically, and you could drop this through a hole in the bench and it would just butt up to the bearing, and then you could just hit this end with have a piece of wood on there, hit it with a hammer, and then the axle would fly out. But we don't have anything like that, so what I'm going to do is create a little bit of height and actually use the Freehub. We're going to drop that through there, so we need quite a lot more height. Is that enough, or are we touching the floor? I think we're touching the floor still. So you're going to need some sort of way of increasing the height. It's obviously quite a long axle, so we've got quite a big stack there. But yeah, there must be another way of getting the bearing off that's a little less complicated than this. But yeah, we're going to just give that a little tap with the hammer. And it actually comes out relatively easily, so you haven't got to go crazy. But I was a little bit worried that the bearing might damage the Freehub, but it was sitting on there nice and flush, so yeah, that's cool. And then what we are left with is everything basically in pieces, but we do actually need to take this one out, which I almost forgot about. That one's really dead. So yeah, grab the hub tool again. And this is what I was saying earlier, where we can actually use the axle. So if we pop this axle in with the short end first, that will basically just butt up to the inside of the bearing, and you can just pop that out with the same method that we've been using with the old hammer. I need to get a stand as well for my camera, so I've got more options with angles and whatnot. But yeah, we just zoom out a little bit. Just make sure that's actually on there nice and straight. Just check to make sure that's moving. There it goes, and there's your bearing out, and you end up with basically the same issue where it's kind of stuck on there. So just gonna grab a little Freehub trick again. You might actually be just able to hold it and give that a little tap, because it's not pressed on there, it's not really tight on there, it's just sitting quite loosely. That failed miserably. Bit awkward that was. So yeah, let's grab the little stack system again. Oh, we do have a little bit of room there actually. There we go. And finally we have basically all the parts removed. So we've got that, we've got this, and then all the pawls are elsewhere. So yeah, there is your kind of one way, I guess, of removing all the bearings, and what you've got to do now is just clean up all these kind of areas so that when you insert your new bearings, everything's kind of nice and fresh and all the faces are free from like debris and stuff. So yeah, we'll get onto that. Yeah, so just for reference, what you have is 6903 for the hub, 2 times, you need 2 of them. For the rear of the Freehub, you need a 6902. So we've gone 6903 in the hub, 6902 for the bigger Freehub, and then a 6802 for the smaller Freehub. These ones are a bit weird in the sense that Hope kind of labelled them a little bit differently in their own branding, but basically they are 6802s. So yeah, we've got everything we need. What I'm going to do first is rebuild the Freehub, and then we'll sort out the hub later. One of the things that you probably want to do is just clean it up. So where you've got like anywhere where the parts are going to go, or it's going to interact with anything on the Freehub, I would just grab a cotton bud, maybe some degreaser or something like that. At least something that's cleanable and it's going to evaporate. You don't want the degreaser to stay there because you do need to grease up these areas, but you know, as you can see, it's pretty dirty in here. So what I'll do is I'll clean this up. There we go. Oh no, I forgot the bloody tube. Yeah, so in this bit we're going to put the bearings in, and I already put them in and I forgot to put the tube in there. So yeah, don't forget the tube. It's nice and clean as well. We've cleaned that one up. So we've got our 6802 bearing with the bright drift or press tool, and then the 6902. So yeah, let's drop one of the bearings on there and try and align it nice and straight, so that when we do start to tighten it down, it goes in straightish. They do kind of level themselves out. I'm just going to drop the tube in there and then do the same with this one. Just try to start it nice and straight. It's probably the hardest bit in terms of filming because the tool's quite awkward and hard to get into the shot fully. There we go. So that's just going to butt up to there like that. I'm slowly just going to turn that, and it's quite easy to move. Once we not long now, it should want to stop. There we go. So what we're going to do is unwind that. We just need to check that the tube in the middle isn't being pinched so that you can still move it. Otherwise it's going to be difficult for the next person. Yeah, we can just about move it. So if we try and zoom, you can probably see that on this side it's a bit glowy. There we go. There, the tube is kind of sticking out a little bit, and we can move it. So that's, in my view, pretty much perfect because it's not going to rattle around in there. And just make sure this area where the bearing is going to sit into is nice and clean. It's quite happy moving quite a lot. There we go, we're just going to have a little look at it. There we go, that's a lot better now already. You can kind of, I could feel the bearing just slip into place, whereas before it just went in wonky and didn't want to know. And there we go, we're done. It's only a couple of turns on the tool and the bearing's already seated. And there you go, it's a little visual check, just so you can see what it's about and where it kind of sits. So there is like there's a couple of ramps here. There's one on the very outer edge, which is only what, 2 mil or something. And then there's this flat area, and then it goes down further, and then there's the bearing. So yeah, you can kind of get some idea of where that wants to sit in there. So what we can do now is just slot our axle in. And the thing is, when you press the other bearing in, it's going to push on this axle and basically push it that way, and then it will sit properly inside the back of the bearing. It's going to butt up to it, so ultimately the bearing is going to be pushed. So as we push this end and we press the bearing on from this end, it's going to push this along, and then you'll find that that bearing will sit on there on the inside, and the other side it will be up to the right location. Yeah, that was rubbish. So yeah, I just wanted to show you really that's where it sits in there. Once again, just kind of spin it and make sure it looks good, like it's not higher at one end than the other. It looks like it's in the right place. When you kind of take these things apart, it's always a great idea to check, maybe take pictures of where these bearings sit, just so you know as a reference point. But that is dependable upon who fitted the bearings last time and if they're in the correct place, which they should be. So yeah, we can slot our axle through. There we go, we can push that in there nice and straight. A little bit of me waffling on there. Let's get onto this bit. We're just going to tap this bearing in nice and slowly. Same thing, just keep an eye on it. And I always like to do circle motions on the hammer until it's in a little bit. Just spin it, see what it looks like. See if one bit's higher than the other. So far so good. Things won't spin anyway when you've got like new bearings. It's not going to spin that much. And what we'll do is we'll get onto the Freehub and sorting out the pawls, which is the next bit. So on that last bit I was actually wrong, and I was kind of looking at the hub because it was flush with the top of this. And as you can see now, we've kind of hit it down and probably it's gone down 5mm further. So on the inside of the bearing, you want to be able to see part of the axle come through. I don't know what happened to my little screwdriver, there we go. And then you know it's kind of seated in the right place. So what you've got is the blue seal from the bearing, and then you've got a bit of metal, which is the inner part of the bearing. And then you've got another bit of metal, which is the bit the bearing is butting up to, and then you've got the shaft. So you want to see this part come flush with the bearing. And when when I hadn't pressed this bearing in fully and it was flush with this area here, basically I could see down into this gap here, and that's what kind of alerted me that it was probably in the wrong place. So yeah, there is a little kind of lip there that you want to come through, and it wants to be roughly flush with the inside of the bearing. Yeah, so what I was saying about the bearing and how this axle should look, when I had this on before, it was basically that it was probably about there. So I had a couple of mil further that it needed to be over. And what I noticed is when I looked, just kind of set this up quickly, when I looked down here, so you got your hub there and this is your Freehub end, there was this gap between the bearing and the shaft. And what you actually want to see is you want to see this part of the shaft come into the top of this bearing here. So it wants to be sitting flush. So you can see there's like a lip here, and that wants to be sitting flush with the top of the bearing. And that's how you know it's in the right place. It's kind of difficult for me to show it because I'd have to press the bearing onto the depth here, which is probably more like 5mm. I guess once you've done all that, make sure things are spinning nice and true. And then you know that your bearing's sitting in the right place and they're not like at an angle or anything like that. The next thing, I guess, is to do the Freehub pawls, which is a relatively easy thing. And I am going to use a bit of grease, which is mobile. So I use a mobile grease. It's called XHP 222. So it's something I use on all the pedals and things like that. And what I did with the the springs and the pawls is just clean them up a little bit, because they do get quite dirty and people chuck a load of grease on them, and yeah, I didn't really want them clogging up. So what you got to imagine, or remember, is that on your Freehub, which will be that way around, it's going to click this way. So it's going to turn anti-clockwise. So what you want to do, I guess, would be to have the little spring drop in on the right hand side. Well, it's my right, it will be on the left on the screen, but it's facing me and this is my right hand here. And we're just gonna, really we do want a little bit of grease just down in these little holes, mainly on this edge really, this curved edge of the spring, and also on the curved edge that's on the paw as well. So if I grab me grease gun, I'm just going to pop a little bit of that at the top. And I just don't like to run a lot of this, to be honest with you, because it just gets really messy and the pawls will just end up getting stuck. So yeah, the spring basically, I'll show you it when it's installed. Spring sits like that. Hard with the light reflecting, but yeah, that's how it sits, and that creates the springiness of it. And then you're going to grab your paw, and obviously the smooth side goes on the outside. Sometimes I find if you just rest it on top of the spring like that, and then you can just push the spring in and push down on the paw, and there's your paw system. I would advise you just wipe off any excess grease. Like I said, you don't really want a lot in there, and that's all you do for the 4 of them, and then you'll end up with a clicking system. So there you go, that's how you do that. So what I'll do is put the 4 on, and then we'll do the Labyrinth seal. And yeah, I just thought I'd just show you the mechanism working. I haven't put the little washer on yet, and we haven't done the Labyrinth seal. It's just basically a demonstration of the teeth, if you can see them on there. That's how they work. There's that. So what we're going to do is grab your Labyrinth seal. Didn't actually clean this one yet. Just going to grab a little cotton bud, clean that up around this inner edge. So when you have it, it basically sits like that on the hub. So this kind of lower end bit, it's got like a ramp, so it's got a higher bit and a lower bit, goes facing towards the hub. So yeah, you're just going to slide that over there. Just try and walk it around. There you go, you've got to be a little bit forceful with it. It's a little bit nerve-wracking, you think you're going to break it. Put your washer back that you took out. That's going to go over the shaft. And that just stops this kind of Freehub area pushing into the hub and damaging it. Kind of makes it stand up a little bit higher so it can spin as well. And that slides onto there like so. And then you can push that into place. It's really easy on these ones. Some of the Pro 4 ones you need a special tool, which I do have somewhere. It's kind of like one of these tools. And it just means that you can push down on that seal. Make sure it's in place, but maybe where this hub's a bit older and the seal's a bit older, it doesn't really need any additional help. And then you've got your cap. If you wanted to, you could clean up inside this little rubber seal, maybe around the edges. Also do this as well. As for these, some people do grease them to get them off a bit easier. When they are inserted into the bike, the frame's going to compress and basically hold them in place anyway, so yeah, I don't really see a huge problem with greasing them. Just need to find out if the grease that you're using is going to affect the rubber seals and cause them to expand, which can be a big problem. End cap goes on. Is that the right way around? Yeah, it is. There we go. And you can see when we've got the end cap on, there's only like 1 millimetre of the green seal that you can see. And then we just need to find the other end cap, which is here. Maybe give that a little clean up on the inside. There is probably a size for the seals, the O-rings, but it's not something that I know of. And then pop that into place, and there you go, it's fully operational. Nice sound on them, good bearings, ready to go. Was there something else? Probably, but it's not important to the video, so there you go. Hope Pro 2, I believe it is. Freehub. All sorted. There we go, that's probably alright.